But welcome on stage, the three of you, and the stage is all yours.
All right. So we've done with the introductions. That saved a lot of time for us. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And the next 25 to 30 minutes, we're going to talk about something that I personally feel very passionate about. And I'm sure it's on top of the objectives of your agenda for most of you guys, as brand marketers, as agencies, as ad tech partners. So before we get into this conversation, with this awesome panel that I have, I just wanted to quickly, declassify what we call as this Gen Z about. I'm sure each one of you knows about, but there are certain facts which I wanted to put on the, on the table before everyone. So Gen Z today typically, represents about 30% of our population, and it's expected to be 40% by 2020. This is a community which is born in the era of lightning-fast internet, smartphones, on-demand video, gaming consoles and gaming clouds, and of course social media all around them, right? So in fact, this is the first collective of what we call the real smartphone natives, and I don't think they really know an era where social media didn't exist, like most of us. So while we used to have millennial earliers, whom we used to call them as mobile pioneers, I think it's Gen Z now who's actually replaced them as the native, the native people on the native smartphone generation out there. And it's mainly coming because of the fact that they have a very clear understanding about how to leverage different platforms for different purposes. So just to give an example, they look upon Insta as more of an aspirational. They follow news and trends on Twitter, and in China they probably leverage Weibo and WeChat, right? So they've got their own clear alignments on how to leverage different platforms for. And now, of course, going ahead, we have TikTok coming in, which is becoming a global phenomenon. And I was just reading something while I was on my flight to Rome that how in 2018 they had more than 1 billion downloads, and I'm assuming that's largely coming from this section of the community itself. In terms of spending power, I wanted to highlight, something very important, that this community that we call as Gen Z, they represent roughly around 44 billion in terms of spending power, which is fairly big enough. But if I factor in the influence that they have on their home, the parents, and the home purchases, this roughly reaches to 200 billion. So $200 billion, I'm sure, it's serious business to all of us, as brand, as agencies, as ad tech, as publishers, right? So it's time for us to be, really cautious of how we look upon this audience, because it's born in an era of internet and technology, so they're very, very clear about it. So with this background, I'm just going to rope in my colleagues out here and just have some few questions that I thought would be interesting for each one of us to have a better understanding. So my first question, Kenny, let's start with you. We know Gen Z has a very short time span attention, right? In terms of when they react to content, right? It's less than 8 seconds compared to millennials who was 12 seconds. And I read a recent report from MMA which said about brands should start thinking about having a 1-second mobile strategy, right? So it's I don't know. It's really amazing. So what are your thoughts on how does this attention span of less than 8 seconds impacts your storytelling to be captivating enough?
There are a couple of things that we are doing in China. I hope the case is relevant. I think first, we need to follow where the consumer eyeballs. So our media spending now we already surpassed 80% of the dollar is on digital. Yeah. And then for some of our brands, even 100% of the media spending, it is on digital. And among the digitals, we actually spend more than half on the social and those short video platforms, which are the Gen Zs, they really spend most of the time on. So I think that's number one. Secondly, I think what we are thinking is, we used to be out of the content, like we do a lot of pre-roll on the hot content. Now we start to be in the content. Like by saying that, for example, we know the Gen Z, they really are into the gaming. So for some of our brands, we actually co-create the gaming characters with the Crossfire for Gillette. We want to be in the content so we get their attention so that they can engage. Like for some of the female brands like Whisper, we actually co-create some of the content with a virtual idol called Luo Tianyi. I'm not sure whether you guys know. It's a 15-year-old virtual idol who had a name, profile, even get into different concerts, but she doesn't exist. But we really collaborate with this idol to create our packaging, our content, everything. So I think the best way to attract their attention is to really be in the content.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'd agree. As a media owner, ad tech, or whatever you guys bucket someone like Triple Lift in, we've got a couple of responsibilities there. It's to listen to brands and make sure that we provide formats and the pipes to this inventory to allow brands to do that. So short form video is so important, not just a 30-second one. And actually, our mission statement as a native ad is about being in content, is about blending in. The more you stick out, the less you earn that attention. So it's all about earning the consumer attention through non-disruptive formats and formats that allow brands like P&G to do whatever you want, really, whether it's 6 seconds or, I mean, it's the worst when you see 2-minute video on a brief. You're like, well, not interested, definitely not for Gen Z. But our job in this ecosystem is to allow brands to be able to execute whatever they want, as well as provide it with formats that earn consumer attention.
Brilliant. Just a quick check, again, as I started, considering the attention span that we have, it's less than 8 seconds, and I'm time and again, I personally have been reflecting on this, as well, because it kind of sometimes, weighs the onus on, do I hold my media strategy, or do I hold my creative strategy, or do I hold my measurement strategy, right? Because if I'm chasing a 1-second attention span, and we know this, how they don't scroll, they ski through the content, right? So it's imperative. Are we able to measure that, from a measurement perspective?
So it's a really good question, and one of the things I think that we as an industry need to be better on and work collaboratively with agencies, brands, ad tech is the environments people are in. So on mobile, I think you said 90% of your traffic in China is mobile. The speed at which people are running through that context and social is probably 2 seconds a page. That's where 1 second comes from, that you want to get their attention. If someone's doing some research on a car or reading up on Tottenham win the Champions League or what have you like that, you're going to spend more time on the content. So to say that you've got the same asset creative for both of those would be naive from an agency or a brand's perspective. So it's working out where you want to reach them contextually, and then I think designing the creative to that.
Great. And Gary, one quick question on, a follow-up question on this is, especially from the China context, because that's one market where it's 90% mobile,
More than 90%.
allocation. Yeah, more than that, correct. So you said. Now, how much has it shifted? Because obviously, with that kind of a shift and with that kind of a complete repositioning, I'm sure it's no more the TV copy that kind of gets adapted to mobile as well, right? So have you guys been, moving your creative strategy as well from making sure it's 2 seconds, 6 seconds,
Yeah, big time. We used to have 1:15 and 1:30. That's the brief we gave to
Right.
our.
That's the norm.
Yeah, that's the norm for it. But for now, we are now creating we call it BGC, the brand generated content. We create sets of the content,
Awesome.
tailor-made for different platforms. For example, in the pre-roll, we still have the 15 seconds. However, we want to make sure the brand and the storytelling has been dramatically changed. We put the branding and the brand promises earlier. And we also have 3 to 5 seconds for those open screen. We co-create with a lot of KOLs, actually, thousands of KOLs on the social content. So we give them our talk point of the product. Actually, let the KOL to really develop a story around our product in their own way, because different KOL have their own personality, the way they talk about the story. We need to let go our control of some of the brand. But just giving them the key talk points and let them just develop to be very authentic. Like you say, the Gen Z, they don't want fake things. They don't want the manufactured tone. But they welcome advertising that are truly engaging, truly entertaining, or really authentic. So the challenge for us, but which is also a great time for us, is we no longer produce one piece of copy. We tailor-made the content into a different media format. and then make that adapt to the environment and context, like Harry mentioned.
Great. So second thing which I wanted to talk about is the ability, the way this community of Gen Z, they juggle between different screens at the same time, right? And that kind of poses a big challenge for brands to catch their attention, because it's not just screens, it's also different platforms. As I said towards the beginning, they have a different purpose for every platform assigned. So how does that impact from a allocation perspective, the media choices that you guys make, in terms of how do I reach out and have the right context with Gen Z?
So I think, again, from an ad tech's point of view, we know that it's going to be part of pretty much every media strategy going for Gen Z at the minute, whether it's getting their attention on Twitch while some sort of show's going on in the background, while they've got their smartphone in front of them and their iPads on at the same time. So from an ad tech perspective, we have to make sure that we allow brands or traders the opportunity to have their triple F strategy, talk to their T strategy, talk to whatever OTT strategy they're doing, talk to whatever gaming strategy they're doing. So our responsibility there lies in being able to offer that to brands via our integrations within DSPs and the SSP connections. Let's go a little bit deeper into that. Having it actually opens up a wider world of false stats. So we have two eyes, right?
Yeah.
And our attention span might be a second or what have you. So you're moving in and out of context. And it's really down to them brands and whoever's executing the campaign to understand that if they've run something for a day parting of 3 hours from 7 till 10 p.m. around a major sporting event or a Game of Thrones final or what have you, it's down to the traders and brands to understand the difference between something being totally interacted for that 3 hours or actually being part of a split campaign across a 3 or 4 screen platform. So there's two parts to that from our point of view. One, making sure that we allow that to be opened up and do our part from a technical integration point of view, but two, make sure that we push back to brands and say, yeah, this is great, but actually if you were 4 screening, take it as a quarter of the performance. That's all part about being honest ad tech, but
sure.
Yeah, it's important.
Helpful.
Yeah, for us, we are a very data-driven company.
I'm sure it'll be very different in China for sure. Like it's the largest digital population out there.
The beauty about the big data, and also we know the more we know about consumers can help us to allocate our budgets based on the platform that they spend their time. So for those brands, so some of the platform like Alibaba or WeChat, and we know that Little Red Book in China, Bilibili, those are the really like top platform, like TikTok as well, where we know the Gen Z are, we will allocate based on that. I think that is the first. Second, like you say, when we run a campaign across the different publishers and screen, we define the role of different publishers as well. Some are very awareness-driven, so we want to just have the exposure-driven, reach-based kind of media. But some of the platform we want to do content co-op, content generation, like the Bilibili, those we want to do some deep co-op, very driven by the engagement, so we will have a different piece of a message with them. So for us, it's still based on the eyeball consumption and also the role of the content. I like this morning the tax guy talk about the content have different weights.
Yeah.
Content, light content and heavy content that can inform how we define our strategy and then content strategy as well.
Great. And the last thing that I had in my mind to discuss in this forum was, something that we see with this community, with this generation called Gen Z, like authenticity is key to them, right? They are very cautious, or they are very, I would say, aware of the fact of things about data privacy, how much their data protection means to them. And at the same time, they're not scared about sharing their opinion about the likes or dislikes. I think this is one community which is most vocal about their experiences with brands, with KOLs, or anybody for that sake. Now, and obviously the expectation from brands is to get a more personalized in their interaction with this community so that they're able to understand their needs and accordingly reach out to them. So how does that impact in the, like in this era where we are looking at not just Gen Z, we're looking at millennials as well. When we target different audiences, when you talk about Gen Z and the buying power that I spoke about, it kind of overlaps the overall spending as well. How do you guys look upon that, building that personalization with them?
Yeah, I think for the Gen Z, one of the insights that we learned, like we said, they are actually the group really have their own tribes. I don't know in other places, but in China, people say, if I am in the ACGN tribe, you are in the idol fan tribe. Our distance is more than heaven and hell. This is called the longest distance between two tribes. So they have their own belief on their vertical tribes. For us, the way that we do it is really, you have to feed them with the message or the content based on their interest. You cannot feed a guy, a gaming fan, with some cosmetic information. They will find very insulting on that one.
Well, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the things. So we really do our content based on their interests and then tribes and based on their behavior. The other thing is also we find the Gen Z, they don't like to be taught, but they like to be invited into participating in your brand value. We find out actually when we talk about the product superiority to the people, they are not interested. They just close. But when we share our brand value, we actually invite them to share their opinion about the brand value. They start to be engaged. So sharing and inviting participation, get them in part of the brand, not talk to them, but talk with them, I think is something that we find most effective.
And they're participating.
Yeah, they're participating.
As long as you have a clear purpose.
Yes. So that's why I think a brand needs to be having very clear, consistent brand purpose and consistently share and invite people and talk about it is being very important. Number 3, I think, is the beauty of big data. We have a lot of big data based on the e-commerce, their purchase, their media habit. We are able to serve them with personalized information, which appeal to them.
Yeah.
I think that also help us to get in their selection pool or consideration pool.
Fantastic.
I love how you call them tribes. That's so accurate because they're actually a really easy pool to define. I feel like Gen Z, it's not really confusing. They're these self-awareness group from a certain age. And like if you speak to some of the younger media outlets like MTV, I'm calling them younger, but MTV, they describe them as the founders that are going to change something. So I think because it's easy to identify, they're self-aware of data, they're self-aware of themselves as a digital entity and whatnot. It's actually an easy thing to design, to execute on. The hard part then comes from the information you have to execute them. So data in different ways, right? You have your own first-party data, I'm sure, so you have a deeper understanding. If someone's clicked on something as a cookie, you can retarget them. But then it's down to publishers to define, or media owners to define those contextually relevant channels. So on Telegraph, which is historically a 50-plus readership, there's some real strong travel content there. And if in that tag that they send back to the programmatic trader, it's not highlighted everything that's in that context other than you just see Telegraph and travel news, as a trader, you're going to ignore that. And you're going to miss out on some real valuable, contextually relevant premium inventory because the publisher hasn't bucketed it correctly. So it's about taking the first-party data and then knowing the channels you want to hit and making sure those channels are giving you the right feedback or the right info in that tag for you to then make an educated selection rather than a generic piece of info. So yeah, that's how I do it. I mean, personalizations, it's all about them. They want to be made to feel like it's about them. It's ads about you. you self-entitled person.
So, Harry, to your point, you made a valid point about the way you look upon targeting and leveraging different platforms and all. So, another reality of this community and this Gen Z audience is that 70-75% of them are spend their time, entertainment for them is streaming, right? So we're talking videos mainly. And I was reading another report, where from Cisco, I think they mentioned that by 2021, 80% of the content is going to be video. Right. So we are aggressively moving to that stage, right? And as I said, as I spoke about the buying power at the beginning of this conversation, if 200 billion is what we are looking at today, I'm assuming by 2021 this is going to be 300 billion, right? So that makes it real serious business for us, right? Now, as a measurement, as an ad tech company, what are your thoughts about brands and publishers, what kind of content? Because it's going to be a big race about creating that kind of content. Candy spoke about different tribes. So that means unlike a decade back where we used to just give a 15-second or a 30-second TV copy to our brands and say that, okay, here we go. Now we need to recreate, refurbish, retarget, and personalize that content. Is that something that's going to put an extra burden on publishers as well as on brands?
I think publishers will have to adapt, evolve, or they will become extinct when it comes to revenue-wise, because the moment they don't readapt their content and their video content to fit this powerful buying model, then they'll slowly see their revenues drop and they'll eventually catch up like they always do. But from a video perspective, right, you're going to see that we hear a lot. I think those talks on OTT a lot, and we're currently trialing with a couple of online streaming companies, Hulu's of the world, about implementing OTT ads within there to enable the brands to reach these Gen Z. The other side of things is I do spend a lot of time streaming videos, but a second screen in they're flicking through their research and what have you. So streaming is going to be 80% of what they do, 75 now, but their second screens will be there. But video still has a place on that second screen, has a place as a non-disruptive model that blends in, that doesn't annoy someone or frustrate them halfway through them taking that content. And I'm not talking about pre-roll, I'm talking about midway as well. So they will adapt. I think OTT is going to be the answer. I do.
That's a new added screen.
yeah. I mean, listen, we get OTT in product placement. We don't think we do, but if we're watching something and I'm watching a Suits show on Netflix in the UK and I'm seeing him swig a Heineken, there's a very high chance that exact same episode in the US that he's swigging a Budweiser.
Yeah.
And what have you. And that's just become a programmatic process in an OTT perspective. So product placement is an old form of OTT now, in my opinion, because it's an ad that's being put over a video, whether it's product placement or not. I think in time that will be a programmatic process.
Brilliant. So in the interest of time, net, and this is something which I believe coming out of this conversation, I think for most of the business, and when I say business, for brands, for agencies, for publishers, I think the need of the hour is in the understanding of the behaviors, the needs of this tech adapt audience that we call as Gen Z, and going ahead, it's going to be Gen Alpha, probably 5 years down the line. I think that's going to be super critical because it's critical for us to make sure how we look upon our creative, our storytelling to them. So having content that's optimized, of course, for mobile going ahead, building a piece of content that's direct, that's having a clear purpose, which represents the evaluation, the value for the brand, is something which this audience is going to look forward, especially from a personalization perspective. And again, keeping in mind that this audience is going to grow, the spending power is going to grow. I think for any business to be successful, for brands to be successful, they need to adapt to this change. They need to sync their thinking in line with the behavior and the needs of how this audience is thinking now. So thank you so much. Let's open for the questions. Any questions from the audience?
Any questions?
I know this is something which resonates with all of us.
It's so interesting to hear how big difference there is and how similar they still are. But for a European, listen to tribes and stuff, I'm like, wow, okay, fantastic. There must be questions, guys. You have.
I have a question for.
Okay, so let's.
Is anyone here Gen Z? Class themselves as Gen Z.
Or
That's an
Anybody
interesting
have one at home? How
Okay.
old are a Gen Z?
95.
95, post 95.
Yeah, born after 1995.
When they talk about the post Gen Z, I was like, oh my God, it's like
I have one at home, but now I understand
Yeah,
it way
that's-
better.
have been the mother
That's
of
my
Gen
biggest
Z.
advocate that I look forward when I have to look upon what do I need to do to target Gen Z. I go back to my son.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's good we make babies.
Okay.
Any questions, guys? We have Procter & Gamble, China. What not to like? Triple lift. Questions?
Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. One brave female. I like it. In the name of diversity, we had a lot of men before.
Yeah, we just felt we kind of nailed it.
So what do you think would be the single biggest intervention a business should make to win with Gen Z?
The reason why I asked the question, and it's not all businesses, but certain products. So Gen Z, they're like the influencers in a lot of ways. A lot of bloggers fall into Gen Z, and my son always talks about what his mates are wearing or what they have. And 9 out of 10 times, that's way out of price bracket. So I think brands should really think about if they want Gen Z as a consumer or an influencer, they have to determine whether that person actually is a consumer in that target process. So we're talking about headphones. And Bose is a great example where Gen Z is the people they want wearing their products and walking around with their headphones, but they can't afford them. So they then target the gift buyers in that buying process and what have you. So I think in terms of an intervention, they need to distinguish actually, are they the consumers or are they the influencers of their product?
Yeah.
You know.
I really echo that. If there's one ideal stage we can have is we should start co-creating the product with the Gen Z so that they are part of the co-creation journey, not just the end of the media targeting. So they will become our source of inspiration for the product design, content design, and then flow the way to all the media targeting and etc. So invite them in the process.
Yeah, I think just being purposeful and a clear action, in terms of where I want to guide them, what I want from them I think is something which they expect. And as long as it's clear to them, it's purposeful to them, they engage.
Can you give an example of the packaging you just talked about? Like, how would you do that in Procter & Gamble to get them involved?
Yeah, for example, actually we have launched a feminine pad, like still the same co-create with the Luo Tianyi, the virtual idol. The old way we do that is we will ask someone, the design studio, to design something, and then we will put on the test with 300 people and then test it and then see, what is the OAR. The way we do it differently this time is actually the team, the innovation team, go to talk to those teenagers and then ask them to start giving the sketches and then vote for which are the one that they like the most. Obviously, the one that they like the most might not be the one that brand favor the most because the branding must be smaller, the color might not be our brand equity, things like that. But yeah, we make a balance out of it. But that is some of the case. I'm sure in future more and more we see in the industry, we even ask them to print their names and then their attitude, their quotes on the packaging. Yeah.
Last question.
Hi, do you think there's a danger we're dumbing down the Gen Z and making generalizations because maybe a Gen Z in one part of the world is different from another part of the world? And also, this is the generation that is prepared to pay a subscription to a Spotify or subscribe to Netflix. In fact, Netflix probably being one of the biggest subscription models that they just accept that that's part they'll do. So, are we making too many generalizations?
So
sorry, Daniel,
let me take
please.
that.
Please, yeah.
The first point. I think it's a very fair question, very valid, especially in today's context. But at the same time, that's what we talked about when Candy spoke about, how we look upon creating different tribes, right? And when we say different tribes, it doesn't mean like we kind of get too broad, but it's just about too narrow, sorry. But at the same time, making sure that we are able to dissect, our audience basis who our brands who is, so who that audience is, and accordingly then look upon, how we are being purposeful in our communication with them. What's the clear purpose that we as brand stands for, so that they are able to understand that and respond to that, right? So that's something that I would say upon, seeing that, making it, getting too many segments, getting too many, too narrow out of that, being more contextual, being more, broader about who these tribes are, and accordingly making sure that we address in their context. So as I said, each of them have a different platform, so Insta versus Twitter and all. So.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, we are not generalizing them. We respect the difference that they have. We respect the difference that they have versus us. The way they consume the brand, the way they look at the brand are different. We need to just be in a way differently than the last generation. Because in China, at least what we know, the millennium or even the post-80s, they believe in authority. They really believe in big celebrity, what they talk. That is how, just simply how that generation grew up. The way we listen to them is, so that's why to let the brand get through them, we use a big celebrity. But for this new generation, because they don't believe in big celebrity anymore, if we are not respecting these differences, we are not able to make friends with them. So, so I think that's a very good watch out, but it keeps in mind that for us, we have to keep in touch with our consumers, really, really feed them what they want and what they know.
So I suppose
Thank
it's
you.
really about our brands being authentic
Yes.
and relative to
Yeah,
the audience. That
Absolutely.
yeah.
And as you just heard, like they're moving away from the KOLs. They're looking at building their own resources for, point of views, hearing opinions and all. They're making their own point of views around it.
Perfect. Thank you. And thanks for flying so far to share with us. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
been a pleasure.
Thank you.